All right, let's talk about Immanuel Kant. Now, I know what you're thinking. He's one of the heavyweights, notoriously difficult to read. But trust me, we're going to make sense of it all. We're going to use a really simple metaphor, a reality factory, to build a blueprint of his single biggest idea, how your mind literally constructs the world you experience. Ready? Let's dive in. So everything for Kant starts with this one big mystery. See, the philosopher before him, David Hume, basically said that when you see one billiard ball hit another, you don't actually see a cause. You just see one thing happen, then another thing happen. And you see it so many times, your brain just forms a habit of expecting it. And this idea terrified Kant, because if causality is just a habit, that means all of science, everything we think we know for sure, it's all built on psychological quicksand. He knew there had to be a better answer. So Kant framed the whole problem using this mouthful of a term, synthetic judgments a priori. Let's just break that down real quick. Synthetic means it tells you something new about the world. It's not just a definition. And a priori means you know it's true, like universally, without having to go out and check every single instance. So a statement like every event has a cause seems completely impossible, right? How can you possibly know a universal rule about the entire world before you've even experienced all of it? Answering that one question became Kant's life's work. Okay, so to solve this puzzle, Kant says we first have to pop the hood and look at the basic toolkit of the human mind. He argued that all of our knowledge is built from just two fundamental components. He called them intuitions and concepts. Think of it like this. On one side, you have intuitions. This is just the raw, unprocessed data flooding in through your senses. All the colors, sounds, textures, it's the what of experience. And on the other side, you've got concepts. These are like the rules or the mental file folders our mind uses to sort all that raw data and actually make sense of it. This is the how of understanding. And for Kant, you absolutely positively need both. One without the other is useless. And this line from Kant just nails it. It's probably his most famous quote, and for a really good reason. Thoughts without content are empty. I mean, if you have a concept like dog or justice, but you have no sensory experience to connect it to, it's just an empty word, right? And then intuitions without concepts are blind. If all you have is a flood of raw sensory data with no rules to organize it, it's just total chaos. It's a meaningless mess. Knowledge only happens when these two work together. Okay, so if the mind uses these two tools, how does it actually work? Well, this is where our big metaphor comes into play. I want you to think of your mind as this super efficient factory, an assembly line that takes in raw materials on one end and spits out a finished product on the other. And that product? It's your experience of reality itself. So let's take a tour of how that assembly line works. So here's the blueprint for our factory tour. It's a 4-stage process. First, raw sensation. The raw materials arrive. Second, it all gets formatted. Third, it's actively pieced together on the assembly line. And finally, it goes through quality control, where it gets stamped with these universal rules that turn it into the world of objects and causes we all recognize. Let's walk the factory floor, shall we? The second that raw data enters our mind, boom, it hits the formatting floor. And here is Kant's most radical idea. Space and time are not things we discover out there in the world. Nope. He says they're the pre-installed operating system of our minds. We don't learn about space and time from experience. They're the conditions for having any experience at all. I mean, think about it. You've never perceived something that wasn't located somewhere in space and happening at some point in time. It's the mind's default setting. Next up is the assembly station. And this step is so important. Experience isn't like a passive movie that you just sit back and watch. Your mind is actively working. Kant called this process synthesis. It's constantly stitching together all those moments, all that data that's been formatted in space and time into one continuous story. And what's the thread that holds it all together? The I think. It's the simple fact that all of these perceptions are happening to a single unified consciousness, to you. That's what turns a bunch of random snapshots into a coherent movie. And finally, our stream of experience hits the quality control department. This is where the mind applies its most fundamental master rules. Kant called them the categories. Now, these aren't concepts we learn from experience. They are concepts we bring to experience to give it its final structure. This is the last step that turns that unified stream of sensations into a world of distinct, predictable things. Now, Kant actually listed 12 of these categories, but let's just focus on the greatest hits. You've got the category of substance. That's the rule that lets you see a tree as the same tree even when its leaves change color and fall off. You've got interaction, which tells you that things exist in this big web of relationships with each other. And, most importantly, you have causality, the rule that stamps the connection between two events not as some random coincidence, but as a necessary, predictable law. And this brings us right back to the original mystery. Hume said causality is just a habit. Kant's revolutionary answer is, no way. Causality isn't some habit we learn from the world. It's a non-negotiable rule our mind imposes on the sensory data to make the world make sense in the first place. You can't have an objective experience without it. And just like that, science is secure again because its foundation, causality, is literally built into the architecture of how we think.
So, Kant saved science by grounding it in the structure of the mind. That's awesome. But this powerful solution comes with a staggering, totally world-altering consequence. This is the big reveal of Kant's entire system.
So that final product that rolls off our mind's assembly line, Kant has a German word for it, Erscheinung, which basically means appearance. This is the world we live in, the world of science, of cause and effect, of solid objects in space and time, and it is objective. It's real for us because every single human mind uses the exact same factory settings, the same space, time, and categories.
But, and this is the massive twist, the world of appearance is not the Ding in sich, or the thing in itself. We can know the finished product that our mind makes, sure, but we can never, ever, ever know what the raw material of reality was like before it entered our factory. What is the world like completely independent of our mind structuring it? Kant's shocking answer is, we have absolutely no way of knowing. It's forever beyond our reach.
And this gets us to Kant's most famous distinction. The world we can know is the world of phenomena, the world as it appears to us, after it's been structured by our minds. The world we can't know is the world of noumena, reality as it truly is in itself. Kant basically drew a permanent, uncrossable line in the sand for human knowledge. We can have objective knowledge for sure, but only of the world our own minds have helped to build. The impact of this was so huge that Kant himself called it a Copernican revolution in philosophy. You know, just like Copernicus recentered the solar system around the sun instead of the Earth, Kant completely recentered philosophy around the active, world-building mind. Before Kant, pretty much everyone thought the mind was like a passive mirror, just reflecting a world that was already out there, fully formed. The whole game was to make sure our ideas correctly conform to the objects. Well, Kant just flipped that entire table over. He argued that for knowledge to even be possible, objects have to conform to the structure of our minds. The big question in philosophy was no longer just what's out there. It was what are the rules in our own minds that make knowing anything possible in the first place.
Now, really quickly, our factory has one other department, reason. Think of sensibility as providing the raw input and understanding as providing the structure, while reason is like the factory manager who's obsessed with the big picture. It's the part of us that's always pushing for the ultimate, complete explanation for everything, big ideas like the soul, the cosmos, God. And Kant says this drive is useful, but it's also really dangerous, because when reason tries to treat those big ideas like they're actual noble objects, it's going beyond the factory's limits and it just gets tangled up in contradictions.
And this whole incredible system was unleashed on the world in 1781. When the Critique of Pure Reason was published, it wasn't just another philosophy book. It was an earthquake that completely redrew the map of what we thought was possible to know. So I think the ultimate takeaway is this. Kant's goal was never to give us a final perfect map of reality. In fact, his whole point was that that's impossible. His real incredible achievement was to turn the flashlight around. For the first time, he gave us a detailed blueprint of the very instrument that's doing all the seeing in the first place. A blueprint for the mapmaker itself, our own mind. And that leaves us with one last, really provocative thought to chew on. Kant showed us the universal factory settings that we all share, things like space, time, and causality. But it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other, more personal rules, assumptions, and concepts are running in the background of your own mind, quietly shaping the world that you take for granted every single day?